Hello, thank you for joining us. I'm Linda Baker, and here on the panel with me today is Reverend Linda Burdett, Cathy Richman, and Susan Jarboe. And we've got a good discussion coming up for you, but before we get into it, let's go into a moment of prayer. If you just close your eyes, bow your head with me. Dear Father, loving God, thank you for this day, the miracles forthcoming. Thank you for the blessings and the discussions and the thoughts that we share, and may they be comforting and healing to anybody and everybody that's listening. In the loving God's name, amen.
Amen.
Okay, today I'm leading a discussion on Physicians' Untold Stories. This is a book that I recently found and have looked through. It's by a doctor, and his name is Scott J Kolbaba. And the name of the book is Physicians' Untold Stories, and it's about discover the miracles in your life, miraculous experiences doctors are hesitant to share with their patients or anyone. And the doctor, he lives in Wheaton, Illinois, and he works at the Mayo Clinic there. And the story behind the book is he woke up one morning knowing that a patient of his needed a lung scan. And he didn't know why, though, because the patient was suffering from undiagnosed abdominal pain, not chest or lung pain. The doctor thought he had typical gallbladder or liver issues, but all of his blood tests were normal. He couldn't justify why he wanted to do the lung scan, but he talked the patient into it, and it revealed a massive pulmonary embolism in his lower right lung that was pressing against his diaphragm and causing his pain. The action saved the patient's life. The doctor was moved by the act, and he believes it was divine intervention. That drove him to ask his fellow doctors if they ever had similar experiences with no scientific explanation. After hearing 5 or 6 stories, he decided to write the book. And the book, the way he laid it out, the book has 4 major sections, and each section contains several chapters. And he collected information he was seeking from over 200 physicians. In part 1, he gives several examples of divine intervention. And just to kind of tell you about a few, there was a school bus that had a mechanical problem, a flat tire on the rear wheel, and it caught fire. The bus was full of children, and it was a pretty miraculous story about how they got the fire out and the children were all saved. And in another one of the stories in that particular section, there was a patient that had come into the ER. He had recently had an artery worked on in his arm, and the repair of the artery came apart, and he was literally bleeding to death. And while he was in the ER, the patient started hearing music, and the doctor considered this a divine intervention because hearing that music actually calmed the patient down to the point where they could sew the artery back together, and the patient lived. But there was no music in the ER, was the interesting point of that story. And part 2, he goes into a discussion on death and the afterlife that he had collected from his fellow physicians. And one story he had involved a lady that was in labor, and she was about to lose her baby. She was giving birth to twins, and her grandmother, who used to be a midwife, appeared to her during her labor and instructed her on what to tell the doctors to do. And they followed her directions, and she came through her labor just fine. And in part three of the book, it was about healing. And he told one story about a doctor friend of his that they would sit around and they would tell fishing stories together, and they did this for years. And then something happened to his doctor friend, and he went into a coma, and he was in a coma for many weeks, and they didn't think he would come out of it. But this doctor went in and he sat by his bed and he talked to him every day, and he relived the fishing stories that they had shared together. And eventually, the doctor woke up. It took a few weeks, but he did, and regained his health, went back into his practice. It was a wonderful story. And then the last part of the book, part four, he goes into the power of prayer, and he talks about it. And he told one story about this lady that had had MS since she was a child, and she was terminally ill, and she couldn't walk. She got so bad, and her church would pray with her and work with her, and while she was in a session with some of her friends from the church, she heard a voice from behind her say, "Get up and walk." And with that, she was able to start healing. And the day came, she was terminally ill. The day came that she got up and she walked back down the aisle of that church and attended a service, much to the amazement of everybody in attendance, and just what they all felt as a result of doing that together. It was a beautiful story. But my reason for selecting this book is in the event that there's a listener out there that may have no faith or possibly a deteriorating faith for someone that they love that's sick, maybe even within themselves, and focusing on the positivity that this book energizes might change the course for them. My personal opinion is that when science isn't quick enough to improve bad situations, patients tend to feel the currents of a vortex stirring and lose faith in their physicians. The author spent much effort here to identify the inspirations that drive doctors through their professions, and it's mostly their own families, their hard work and determination, and their knowledge of a higher power he found the case being most often. Well, stories are in here that express they actually love the patients they serve. Well, that's 200 doctors I wish I had access to. Near the end of the book, he identifies several divine coincidences that not only he experienced, but other doctors also did, that miraculously directed their course all the way through medical school and into their chosen specialties. And these are his afterthoughts. Now, here's a quote, his final words. "One advantage of growing older is my ability to look back and recognize an unforeseen hand directing my path. What many might call coincidence, I deem providence. Recognizing that providence fills me with awe and gratitude." Well, I have a friend that every time she runs across the word of interest, she looks it up in the dictionary, and I did this one too. And it said providence means the protective care of God or of nature as a spiritual power. He says in the book, he says, "Why did I feel compelled to share these physician stories? Because so often we take life for granted because in the press of ordinary daily life, we forget the amazing things that are happening all around us, because sometimes we need a reminder that the physical world and the physical body can point to another unseen reality. That's the physician's untold story. So now I turn this over to the panel. I, I was wondering, did it unveil a story in your own life listening to this? Or did you find this information questionable or just additional proof for what you already knew? Are you possibly experiencing a greater or a more frequent merging of science and spirituality than in the days or years past? Are we doing that? What comes to mind for you? You can share. Thank you.
I could share a story. It's not about uh, healing per se. My husband had multiple sclerosis, so you triggered that thought in my mind. And he was very ill. He had the most intense kind of MS. And so every 3 months or so, we'd end up going to the emergency room because he'd spike a temperature or whatever. And one time it was really bad and it was really touch and go, and he was in the ICU. And it happened that this was a pulmonary problem. And so after he was over the worst of it, I said to his physician, his pulmonary person, thank you so much for saving Hal's life. And he looked at me and he said, God saved his life. I was just the instrument. So I enjoyed what you had to say about physicians, and their ideas about the link between science and faith.
Thank you. That was great. I love this topic. And just recently, last month, time goes by so fast, one of the gals who volunteers with me at the thrift shop I'm volunteering at had a lump in her breast, and she had had breast cancer, and she was quite sure the lump was cancerous. So she went straight to the doctor, and the doctor examined it and said, yeah, let's take you out and have it biopsied. So they sent her up to Cookville, which is about an hour away, to get a biopsy. And of course, it took 2 weeks to get in. And she was praying, and she asked her church to pray. And when she got there was nothing. The lump was just completely gone. And they did the test, but they had nothing to biopsy at all. And that's just one more story. I wish we would have these conversations all the time. It makes me so sad that we don't normalize these kind of conversations where we get together and talk about the miracles going on in our life. The very first time I did World Day of Prayer at Unity there in El Cajon, Reverend Ann got up at the closing of the prayer and told a story about an angel who had come into her life, and no explanation, but she'd never forgotten it. He was there, he spoke to her, and then just disappeared, and people had seen it. And everyone in the sanctuary, every single person stood up and gave testimony to a miracle that they personally had witnessed, that it happened to them, but we just don't talk about it. I know I don't, because I don't want to seem like I'm bragging, or it doesn't seem appropriate, or people are going to think I'm crazy. And I personally have so many stories, and you here on the panel know many of my stories, that have just been unexplainable, except an intervention by God, divine intervention, divine presence. And I love this book. I can't wait to read it. I've got it written down. Thank you for sharing it, Linda. And what a great, heartwarming topic. And thank you for bringing it up.
You're welcome.
All right. Well, I'm excited to go next. One of the things that you brought out early in there was music. And I just had this in front of me here. It says, music has the ability to bring us joy and comfort, to motivate us and to help us heal. It has the power to transport us back in time, to calm our worried mind or boost our moods. And I think, you mentioned that one person, how they didn't have the music in the operating room, but I think it's really something that is there, it's available to us, and I don't think enough of us know how healing it is to have music going on. I try and turn it on at night. If I find a meditative soft violin or whatever, it's just very soothing to listen to. So that was the first thing. But the other thing that is I'm just so happy to share is when I ran my foster agency called Angels, we had a lot of people come to us who were not able to conceive. They had infertility. And so they would come to us because they knew that they could foster. And in maybe half the cases, they would end up keeping the child. So it would be a way to adopt, but get the child when it's young before he's been through a lot of foster care. So what would happen is they'd go through all the stuff we made them go through. Then they go into training. And the number one reason we would lose them in training is they got pregnant. And so the mind, and that was the way it got explained to me by Unity or pastor or something, said, the mind knows what you tell it. So you're gonna, oh wow, we're gonna get a baby. We're getting ready to get this baby. So let's go buy some bottles and a crib and all that. So the brain goes, oh, well, I'm gonna be a mom. I guess I better bring an egg. And I am simplifying it, but really it comes down to that. And it was so cute. We had one of our parents and she there again, she had 4 years of infertility, and she was going through training, and she went to her doctor, and sure enough, she's pregnant. And she told him, he goes, that wouldn't have been the Angels Agency, would it? He said, I have a lot of patients who he said are preparing to go become foster parents, and they're pregnant. So I just think that goes along with what you're talking about. It's one thing to be talking about, an illness and a doctor giving you a label or a timeline, and I have a real problem with that. But I do believe that the mind it believes what you tell it. And I think the story about the women all getting pregnant that's what the mind heard. So that's the part I'd like to share. Does anybody else have anything else they want to add to this? No, we're complete. Okay, great topic. Well, we want to thank you, our listening audience. Our panel today is Reverend Linda and our other Linda and Susan Jarboe, and we really enjoyed being able to bring this topic to you today. And we hope that you got something out of it. You could relate to it. Maybe you share it with a friend that, wow, listen to this. So I appreciate y'all being here. Please let us know if you liked it. And I always have to put a plug in here that come join our panel, because it's really, Susan's new and she's enjoying it. And it's really just fun the more people we have. So please come join our panel. And with that, I would like to close us in a little prayer. I feel so, dear God, we just feel so grateful that we can come together like this, and we can talk about topics that have so much meaning in our lives, and that we have the ability to go and live stream this. So people either here in town or people in another country could literally listen to this and learn and be enhanced by this. So we are so grateful, Father, and we thank you, and send blessings to everybody out there who watched our segment today. God bless.
Thank you for joining us, and let's stay connected and grow in spirit. We are on Facebook. Search for Unity Church of El Cajon and follow us and like our posts. You can reach us on YouTube at Unity Church of El Cajon. Please subscribe to our channel, watch our videos, and leave comments, which can help us improve. We are on the web at unityofelcajon.org. Email or call our church office to receive our weekly newsletters, which lists all of our activities and opportunities to learn and grow together.